Can I just do the chair right there? Just the closest distance. I know it seems so ridiculous. I don't think it's even that ridiculous. The problem, the reason they're so sexy is because it's just like naked foot like Cinderella, but there's no platform. So if your phone is hitting wood, it is. It's actually really cool.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. God have mercy on your soul.
There's a moment in litigation when the mask slips. When all the carefully crafted narratives, the PR statements, the strategic silence, they all collapse under the weight of testimony. And that moment is when you see who really had power. It sure wasn't Justin. I know you're sitting at home saying Blake, and sure, she did have power. But what about the ones she called in when her own story started falling apart? So, let's talk about dragons. In Justin Baldoni's deposition, buried in the pages of testimony where he's trying to explain how his entire world got dismantled, he mentions something that's almost too casual to catch. He talks about Blake's circle. Not just Blake and Ryan, but her circle. And specifically, he names them Hugh Jackman, Shawn Levy, Taylor Swift. Now, these aren't random names. These aren't her acting buddies. These are titans. Hugh Jackman has Wolverine cash, Shawn Levy has Netflix. Taylor Swift has the entire music industry in her back pocket and an audience of millions who move in real time when she moves. These are people you call when you're not just fighting one director. These are people you call when you're fighting to take over a franchise. And here's the thing nobody's talking about. Justin didn't call them out by accident. He was answering a very specific question about who was in Blake's world when things started falling apart, when the cast started unfollowing him, when the agencies started making threats, when his own film was being pried out of his hands. He wasn't naming gossip, he was naming pattern. Think about what happened right before the film came out. Every single cast member unfollowed Justin on Instagram, not gradually, not over weeks. Damn near in unison at the same time, just right before a movie drops. Justin testifies to this. He notes it as a very public thing to do, and emphasizes it happened all in unison. That's not organic. That's not individual decision-making. That's a coordinated move. Someone made calls, someone sent emails. Someone got in a room and said, "We're doing this on this day, and we're all doing it together." That's the kind of precision you get when you have people in your circle who know how to move through systems, who have power, who can make things happen. But it gets worse. Because Justin didn't just lose his cast, he lost control of his film. The man who directed it, the man who cast it, the man whose vision it was. Suddenly, he's being edited out, his name being removed, his credit being erased. And Blake, who wasn't even a producer, somehow had the power to take complete control. Justin testifies that he was essentially forced or threatened to step down off his film. He wasn't able to finish his own film, even considering it tested higher. Somehow, the actress of his movie, who was not a producer, was able to take complete control of the film. His name was being removed from his film by credit. He was removed from the majority of marketing materials, from the poster, being removed for the most from the trailer. How does that happen without power? Without backing? Let's talk about Shawn Levy specifically. Shawn Levy directs Ryan Reynolds. They've worked together multiple times. Free Guy, The Atom Project, Deadpool, and Wolverine. Shawn Levy has directed more Ryan Reynolds content in the last few years than anyone else in Hollywood. They're not just colleagues, they're aligned. And suddenly, according to Justin's testimony, Shawn Levy is in Blake's circle. Not coincidentally, strategically. Because Shawn Levy doesn't just direct movies. He knows every executive at Netflix. He knows every studio head in town. He has juice. The kind of juice you need when you want to take over a film from someone who's already made it. The timing on this is interesting. It Ends With Us is supposed to come out. Blake needs the power to control the narrative, to control the film, to control who gets credit and who gets erased. And suddenly, she has access to someone whose entire career is about knowing how to handle productions, how to manage people, how to orchestrate moves. Someone who's literally worked with her husband on multiple projects. That's not friendship, that's chess. Then there's Taylor, because of course Taylor. In the deposition, Justin mentions that Blake had been working with Taylor Swift to get a specific song in the film. Not just any song, a Taylor Swift song. Which means Blake didn't just want Taylor's support, she wanted Taylor's catalog. She wanted Taylor's audience. She wanted Taylor's reach, amplifying her performance, her story, her narrative, and Justin knew it wasn't a fight he could win. He literally says that. I had assumed that that was not a battle or a fight that I could ever win. Do you understand what that means? That means Taylor Swift's involvement wasn't incidental. It was strategic leverage. It was Blake calling in someone with so much power that even the director of the film knew he couldn't compete with it. Taylor doesn't just casually appear in movies. Taylor orchestrates moments. She manages her image with surgical precision. So if Taylor is in Blake's circle during It Ends With Us, it appears because Blake asked for her support and Taylor decided to give it. Which means Blake had the kind of relationship with Taylor that allowed her to make that ask. Which means Blake was operating with serious backing from day one. This wasn't about authenticity. This wasn't about telling a story about domestic violence. This was about leveraging a movie to create a moment, a narrative, a cultural event. And Taylor appears to have been part of that architecture from the jump. Hugh Jackman is the wild card, because Hugh Jackman doesn't need anything from anyone. He's already made his fortune. He's already established his legacy. He doesn't need roles and he doesn't need exposure. So when Hugh Jackman appears in Blake's circle, according to Justin's testimony, it means something different than it means with the others. It suggests Blake had enough cultural credibility, enough momentum, enough narrative backing to warrant his attention, his support. Hugh Jackman showing up in Blake's corner appears to be a signal to everyone else. This is legitimate. This isn't some actress throwing a tantrum. This is someone backed by serious people, serious talent, and serious power. It's validation through proximity. It's the celebrity equivalent of a cosign from someone whose opinion matters because they literally don't need to say anything. He could have stayed quiet, but according to Justin, he didn't. He was there, and that signal appears to have changed everything. Here's where it gets dark. Justin testifies that he was threatened by his own agency. Not warned, threatened. If I didn't release a statement, then the gloves would come off. That's under oath. Do you understand what that language means? That's not negotiation language. That's violence language. That's we have power, and we're about to use it if you don't do what we're saying. And that threat didn't come from Blake directly. It came from an agency. An agency representing major Hollywood players. An agency that had reasons to fall in line with Blake's narrative because Blake appears to have had backing. Blake appears to have had a circle. Blake appears to have had people. So Justin's own representation, the people who are supposed to protect his interests, turned on him because Blake appears to have had enough leverage to make it worth their while to do so. Because the risks of standing with Justin were higher than the risks of abandoning him. Because in Hollywood, you follow the power. And the power appears to have been with Blake. This is what coordinated pressure looks like. It's not just one person. It's a network, a system. A pattern of moves by multiple people operating in ways that suggest alignment because they're all either aligned with Blake, invested in Blake, or responding to what Blake appears to have had. The cast unfollowing in unison, Taylor securing songs, Shawn Levy's involvement, Hugh Jackman in the circle, the agencies threatening, all of these things represent power being applied. All of these things suggest leverage. All of these things suggest a system where Blake appears to have had access to serious resources. And here's the beautiful part. Here's where this whole thing reveals itself as weakness, dressed up as strength. Blake appears to have needed all of this. She appears to have needed Taylor. She appears to have needed Shawn, Hugh, and to have the cast to unfollow in unison. She appears to have needed the agencies to threaten. It looks like she needed every single machine to be activated. Why? Because her allegations, when examined, appear to fall apart. Because her narrative, when examined in court, shows something completely different than what she claimed. Because the evidence, when you actually look at it, appears to show something other than what she accused him of. Because according to her own Exhibit 55, which she submitted as evidence of a coordinated smear campaign against her, the analysis suggests mostly reactive PR work, not a coordinated campaign. Because she appears to have known that if she had to fight this in court with just her story and the facts, the outcome appears uncertain. So she activated her circle, all of them. Every single person with power who could help her maintain control of the narrative? Look at what the contract edits reveal. Blake's team made changes that appear to show early positioning for control. She edited the contract to change the producer identification. She added a clause about box office bonuses being no less favorable than Justin Baldoni's deal, which is interesting because he was doing more work as director and actor. She added executive producer credit language that wasn't in the original draft and specified first position among all EPs. She modified the director approval clause to include language about any replacement director. She added conditions about approval of press releases where she would be mentioned as more than an actor. The inclusion of language about being discussed as more than an actor is particularly interesting because it suggests she was planning to be in a position to be discussed as more than an actor. These are the actual edits from the contract. They appear to suggest planning, positioning, and that this wasn't spontaneous. It feels like she was laying groundwork early because she knew what she wanted and was positioning to get it. But that's just my opinion, of course. But what do you think? Now here's the irony so thick you could cut it with a knife. Blake spent 2024 and into 2025 claiming she was the victim, that she was being smeared, that Justin and his team were running a coordinated campaign against her, that bots were amplifying negative content about her, that there was a digital astroturfing campaign designed to destroy her. And then Exhibit 55 gets unsealed, her own exhibit, the evidence she chose to present to the court, and it shows something completely different. The analysis suggests Justin and his team reacting to organic backlash. It suggests them defending themselves. It appears to show them not engaging in the kind of coordinated, premeditated campaign she accused them of. It appears to show maybe one story getting placed in August after the backlash had already peaked in social media. Meanwhile, what Blake actually appears to have had? An actual circle, an actual network of power. People with real influence making coordinated moves. A director in her husband's inner circle apparently suddenly very involved in her narrative. Taylor Swift apparently securing songs. Hugh Jackman apparently showing up. The entire cast unfollowing at the same time. That appears to be coordinated. That appears to be premeditated. That appears to be a pattern. And she accused him of what she appears to have been actually doing. That's not just hypocrisy. That's psychological projection of the highest order. That's taking the exact thing you appear to be guilty of and screaming that the other person did it. And she appears to have done it so convincingly that mainstream media almost believed her. Almost. You know what's wild about looking at the contract edits? This doesn't appear to have been about getting harassed on set at all. This seems to have been all about position, about control, about contingencies. From Justin's point of view, Blake knew from the start that she wanted to be in charge of this film. And when Justin wouldn't hand it over, she activated her circle. She called for the dragons and they came. Because that's what dragons do. They show up when their ally summons them, and they help burn things down. But here's what dragons don't do. They don't make a weak case strong, they just make it louder. And once the noise dies down and you actually look at what's underneath, you see the truth. You see the desperation. You see the coordinated effort masquerading as a victim narrative. This is what happens when power meets desperation. When someone has enough connections to activate a full-scale operation, but not enough evidence to make their case on its own merits. But in the end, none of it appears to have mattered, because the truth came out anyway. Because her own evidence, when examined, appears to contradict her own claims. The real story is what happens when someone with power and resources and connections finally realizes that none of that matters when you're standing in front of evidence that appears to prove you're not being truthful. That's the moment the dragons stop flying. That's the moment the circle crumbles. That's the moment you realize you were so focused on winning the narrative that you forgot about winning the case. And you were never going to win the case, because the case wasn't about who had more power. The case is about what actually happened, and what actually happened is documented. They couldn't make the truth go away. And now, all of them appear to be implicated in a strategy that appears to have been based on a narrative that didn't hold up. They have lent their power and their credibility to a case that could burn their own careers down. The way this lawsuit is spiraling, I half expect a dragon to land in court and file its own countersuit, but until then, I'm using the flames for s'mores, and I've packed enough for everyone watching it burn with me.
That's all.